Since our last episode, the Supreme Court announced that they have overturned Roe versus Wade, a ruling that has been in place for nearly 50 years. This would end up sparking thousands of protests throughout the country about the decision. In response to the breaking news, Malcolm Jamal Warner would share a post on Instagram featuring educator and activist Jane Elliott, who spoke on the book The Birth Dirt by Ben Wattenberg. According to Elliott, the book says that one of the #1 problems in the United States is that there aren't enough white babies. One solution to the problem is to stop women from having abortions because 60% of the fetus aborted are white. At the end of the video, Elliott would ask her listeners, does that sound like racism to you? Today we have our comedy hype analysts, Vanessa Fraction, Capone, and Pierre calling in to give their thoughts and reactions. Pierre, I want to go ahead and kick things off with you. When you first heard, the ruling to overturn Roe versus Wade, what was your reaction?
Not shocked. It was laid out a while back, and it was laid out. It was laid out in 2016 when folks didn't want to vote for Hillary. Thought she was a crook and whatever it was, and let Donald Trump slide through. You knew what he was about, and I knew it back then that this has been a hot topic. Abortions have been a hot topic for years and years, even in 50 years ago when it first was established that women can have pro-choice. People wanted to change it, and they just had to find the right person. And Trump was the right person that he was going to put some people in the Supreme Court that knew was going to be conservative and going to overturn it. So I wasn't surprised. So now look at now those folks who were like, man, Hillary's a crook. I don't trust Hillary. I don't trust Hillary. All right, well, look where you at now with it. It's just it was inevitable.
Vanessa, I want to get your reactions as well. When you first heard of the ruling to overturn Roe versus Wade, what was your reaction?
My reaction, I was saddened by it and glad that I wasn't in the category of really having to think about that. I'm glad I'm 42 and married and had kids already. And, because that's not, I guess what I'm saying is that it's a lot. Everyone is, talked about how tragic it is and how it's mostly men that are making these kinds of decisions about a woman's body. They're very, very important and private decisions. So it was just a very sad day for the United States in general, you know what I mean? And now you have people that have different agendas that are trying to make, again, these very, very serious decisions about women's health. And it's not even about really women's health. So it's just sad, I guess it would be the answer to how I felt.
Capone, I'll bring that same question to you. What was your reaction when you first heard of this ruling being overturned?
It didn't shock me. Like Pierre said, this has been in an agenda for quite some time. And they just waited. I don't know if it was Trump that did it, but it's definitely being done on the Biden's watch. And everything else that's being done that's kind of messing us up is on the Biden's watch. And so, no, I wasn't shocked at all.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people share that same sentiment of not being shocked. As I mentioned, Malcolm Jamal Warner would share a post on his Instagram featuring educator and activist Jane Elliott. So I want to take a look at that and then come back and get your reactions.
White people are really frightened. If you don't understand the destruction of Planned Parenthood offices, and you don't understand the wall that we're going to build on the southern border of the United States, you haven't read the book The Birth Dirt by Ben Wattenberg. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute, and he wrote a book, the first paragraph of which says, "The main problem confronting the United States today is there aren't enough white babies being born in this country." He was an advisor to presidents of the United States. He wrote the book in 1987. He says if we don't change this and change it rapidly, white people will lose their numerical majority in this country, and this will no longer be a white man's land. Now, I'm not misrepresenting this. I'm telling you almost exactly what he says. He says there are 3 things we can do to solve this. Number 1, we could pay women to have babies, as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is increase the number of legal immigrants that are allowed into this country every year. Then once again, he says, unfortunately, the vast majority of those wanting to come to this country today are people of color, so we don't want to do that. The third thing he says, and women had better pay attention to this, 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Does that sound like racism to you?
Now, Malcolm would follow that up with a post that says, and his caption reads, The big picture real end game. If the obsession with overturning Roe versus Wade didn't make sense before, now it should. If you haven't seen my last post, it explains the why. The self-preservation goals are real. You may not be able to afford the $500 book, The Birth Dirt, but you can afford Dr. Cress Westling's The ISIS Papers. So Pierre, I want to come to you firstly, of course, to get your reaction to the video, but do you agree or disagree with Malcolm Jamal Warner, suggesting that the bigger picture is to preserve white race?
Well, I agree with him, but I agree with my mama too. She said it first. You saw what she said. She spoke fluently. That's my mother. For some of y'all don't know, she knew what time it was. So you can say I ain't. That's my white side right there. Jane, my mama Jane. But no, it's exactly right. I mean, I believe this was the first year that the white growth didn't grow as fast as they expected in the United States. And that just shows you they needed more, they need more white people, because white people are becoming the minority. They were in majorities for a long time now, slipping with brown and black people coming into this country. And just, black people having more kids, not being able to afford abortions like white people can. White women can afford abortions more. And now they're trying to stop that because they can afford it. Those are the ones that can afford it. So they try to make sure they can't have them. And yeah, you'll see they're trying to get the white population to grow up in it. I mean, look who's making those decisions. 90% of people running in Congress is white, so, and, a lot of percentage of men. So they want their legacy and their lineage to continue to grow and stay white in America. Make white, America be a white place instead of a multicultural place, which it should be, because everybody came in here that wasn't from here except the Indians. And so the white man decided, I want to be white and continue to be white. And that's what they're fighting for so hard. And this is Trump is a perfect example of what he's trying to show. Look at Trump's family. They're trying to be that. They're trying to have that white be right and run this country. And so what she said is on point, and what he said, Malcolm Jamal Warner said, was on point.
Capone, I'll come to you. Do you agree or disagree with Malcolm suggesting that, that they're trying to preserve the white race?
I said that years ago. White population are decreasing every year. And they know it. The bad part about it is that it didn't just start. It started when they was raping our black women back then. They've been mixed breeding us. And eventually that mixture has taken over. And the sad part about it all is that you're trying to create something that you can't create no more. That's why we have, and I don't want to say the wrong word, the melanin, how you say it?
Melanin?
Melanin, yeah. They want that bad. They want that bad. They have kidnapped. They have taken women into private things, trying to get what melanin is, and they can't. Excuse me for saying the wrong word. It's hard for me to pronounce, but that's what it's all about. And eventually, we might not be living now, but racism will stop because everybody will be mixed. And these kids and millennium people are not going for that. It will stop.
Vanessa, I'll come to you next. What are your thoughts on, of course, the video, but also Malcolm Jamal Warner suggesting that the reason that, they're pushing this so hard, or why they overturned it, is to preserve the white race?
My thoughts on that is it's a notion that's been going around for quite some time. It's not anything new. It's nice that it is being spread, especially on in a mass way on the internet, so that others can hear it. I definitely have heard about, as Capone was talking about, this rainbow colored utopia, what I mean? One day, that we probably won't be here to see. And I can dig it, what I'm saying? Whatever, that definitely seems like where we're going, I guess, in all these conversations of the why, and these aren't new things that we have heard. I guess my thing is, what are we going to do about it? And knowing this, and, saying that, you were saying it back in 2016, other people said it in whatever year the ISIS papers was made in 87 and all like this. Does it make you vote any differently? Does it make you get out there and want to do, figure out some form of change within your own? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? And me knowing or saying like they're trying to preserve the white race. How is that helping me to figure out a solution of, how to help me as an individual, what I'm saying? Help us in our women's health. I get what you're saying about, don't you believe that this is real or this is why they're doing it? But I'm trying to more talk about solutions and how, if we see these things happening, how we can stop them, because this is not what we want as a society. This is not what we want, as a whole, as we see people out here protesting, rioting and so forth. So if we see these things, how can you
Right. Yeah. And I think AOC talks on that. You know, I've been seeing a couple of her tweets where she's having these conversations about what we can do and what people in charge can do and how the Democrat Party can really take charge and expand, you know, whether it's expanding the Supreme Court and things like that. So I definitely think AOC is a great person to follow because she's providing a lot of those solutions. But as you mentioned, Vanessa, and I think as everybody mentioned, you know, this has been in talks years ago, and Charlemagne the Guy actually responds to Mary Miller, who after, you know, this was overturned, she goes and she speaks. So I want to play that clip, and it'll follow by Charlemagne, what he talked about 3 years ago, and then I'm going to come back and get you all's thoughts and reactions.
This is all about self-preservation for the white race. Okay, follow me for a second. Anybody who reads a little bit knows that according to some census projects, the USA will become minority white in 2045, and the majority will be Hispanics and Latinos. So the population and political power will be with those communities. Now, I was looking at some abortion statistics, and I saw that 37% of women having abortions are white, 37% are black, 19% Hispanic, 7% of other races. So when you understand that some white people have a fear of a brown planet, then you will understand the government's efforts to keep Latino immigrants out. It's not a coincidence that yesterday Trump unveiled a new immigrant plan to overhaul legal immigration. So if you keep Latinos and Hispanics out, you slow down the growth of that community, because all white people aren't Republicans or conservatives, but the white people in these particular states are. And these 7 states that have already passed some sort of abortion ban, they're all red states. Okay, it's Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Ohio, Kentucky, Utah, Arkansas. Population of these places is white. This isn't about religion or saving the lives of fetuses. This is about self-preservation and not losing political power, okay?
Now, as I mentioned, that Charlemagne actually spoke on that about 3 years ago. So this is before this decision was made. But Capone, I want to come to you first. You know, after hearing that and just after having this discussion, does this make you fear how much control the government will have over your life at this point?
No. I mean, the government has been doing what they wanted to do forever. It doesn't change anything to me. It's almost sad that, well, I mean, the government works on fear. They do this setup. We've been feared with the COVID. We've been feared with, I mean, you made a whole world stay inside. So what more can you do for control? Fear, as long as they keep us in fear and they turn us against each other. If you look at what's going on right now, they're dividing the world. Again, this is their thing. They divide the world and then they make their moves, and this is what happens. And so, no, it ain't gonna make no difference. But in 45, we will see a difference if we still live in there. I'm gonna tell you that.
Pierre, I'll bring that same question to you. Does this decision, or just what we're seeing, does this make you, fear how much control the government will have over your life?
I don't really fear the government. I can be disappointed in our people, or our people who didn't go out and vote. I can tell you that much. Who sat back and was like, I ain't voting. Now they pissed off. White folks work in years ahead. We unfortunately work at the moment. White folks plan years ahead. And so someone like Charlemagne, who talks about this 3 years ago, think about it. Have we thought about it in the 3 years since then? A lot of us haven't, until the other day when the Supreme Court changed it. Oh my God, this has been working. This has been in the plan for a long time. This is not new. So I want us as people to start getting politically involved, for local politicians, for national politicians. If you sit on your butt and sit around saying, hey, and then the shit start closing up, because white folks ain't sitting around. Trust me. So many of them are still pissed off that Obama won, okay? They're like, okay, well, we're not going to let that happen again. And they get their behinds out and vote. So sure, we have increased our voting, our points, in the last couple of years, but we need more people. All those ones that stay home all the time and say, I ain't voting, I ain't supporting, I don't know that person, I don't know. Okay, well, those who are in political power, which normally seem like to be white folks, they're making rules happen. Now, with this abortion thing, in some states you can't get one. Now, here it comes to this, y'all. Black and brown people, I'm talking to the black people right now. All right, you better watch out who you sexing, because you better be the right person you laying down with, because if not, you're going to be stuck with a baby. And I'll say this much. Women, in the comments, get ready, are more responsible for a baby being birthed, okay, at the end of the day, because they have a choice. In some states, they don't, but they have a choice. Now their choice is being taken away, and so they're going to be stuck with the situation. But man ain't around. Sure, men should be around. Men should be responsible. But at the end of the day, lady, it's your body. It's your choice. If you decide to have the baby and he ain't around, it is what it is. But remember, if you're laying down with somebody, both ways, I go to both ways. Men too shouldn't be so dirty out there. You better watch out, because it may be a situation where you can't have an abortion, and then you're stuck with the situation. Unless you go overseas, over to Mexico or another state, you got to find. But if you can't afford to go to another state, then it is what it is. So a lot of babies might be born that might not be, I'd be fatherless, unfortunately. So let's be careful who we lay down with for the future.
So Vanessa, I want to come to you next because I know this is, and I'll speak for me, this is near and dear as a woman because, it affects us the most. I want to ask you, as a Black woman, I know, you said, where you are now in life, it doesn't really affect you that much because, you're married and you've already had kids. But when we're thinking about like our future generations to come, how much does that put any fear or any thought of how much control the government is going to have for our future generations to come? Or what are your thoughts on that?
No, I feel the same way I did yesterday, probably, when I was a youth. You know what I'm saying? We had slavery in this country. So I think that would lets you know how much control the government or anything else can happen at any time. I remember being younger and listening to Sister Soldier and watching the video Slavery's Back in Effect. And I always, for me, kept that in my mind as a real thing. You know what I mean? So me as an individual, I can get out there and vote and do this and that or what have you. But as a society, I've always had I guess you use fear or an anxiety that things will be out of our control, which they have with abortion rights and so forth. I'm a woman that says, yes, I've had an abortion before, and I'm quite glad that I was able to do that safely, because some of my choices at that time, it was gonna take me down an even deeper road of things that I couldn't handle. I'm grateful that option was available for me. So do I have concerns and sadness for those that don't have this available for them, and especially for people that have been put into situations that were not even their choosing, such as rape or incest and things of that nature, where there's not even a loophole for that type of thing. So yeah, I have deep concern. I have deep sadness in the way that we're moving. But as far as a fear, it's always been there because of the history of our country.
Absolutely. Now, as you mentioned earlier, Vanessa, and I know I spoke a little bit about AOC, I did wanted to pull up just some of the things that she said, or she's saying, could take place for us to see change in this, because I do think solution is important. I think a lot of people may feel hopeless right now. They may feel like there's nothing that can be done. But here's some things that she does say. So she says we can restrain judicial review, expand the court. So that's expanding the Supreme Court so that we can have more people on that lineup. Clinics on federal lands, expand education and access to Plan C, which a lot of people are not familiar with. Repeal Hyde, hold floor votes, and vote on the Ecuador's bill protecting clinics. Pierre, I know you wanted to speak. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but that's okay. At the end of the day, I think we're all pretty much pro-choice on there, and I think it is a woman's right to control her body. It's a shame that men can make a decision. Majority of men can make a decision on a woman's right. It's a heavy situation to have an abortion. It's not an easy thing, but I also believe a woman should have the right to do that. I think we all should. It's her body, and if you're a religious person, let her and God deal with that. You don't have the right to jump inside and deal with it. Let her and God deal with it. She made a mistake by having an abortion. She'll meet her maker. If you're that much of a believer in religion and God and so forth, she'll deal with her maker. She does. That's a heavy thing. So I just think that it's a shame that we're going down this road that the rights for a woman not to be able to have one is really, really someone telling you what to do with your own body. It's really rough, I think. Again, it's a very traumatic experience if you get pregnant and you don't want a child in the scenarios that you were mentioning about incest. Even just making a mistake, like Vanessa said, is at a time in her life that she wasn't ready to have a child.
Or her health doesn't allow her to.
Right, or health doesn't allow her to. And to make someone carry the kid, I just think that's really crossing the line as a human being to tell another person what to do with their life. I just believe that, even though, that life is inside of them. It should be their decision at the end of the day. That's all I wanted to say. That, people can go back and forth with this, but at the end of the day, it should be a woman's choice to do what she wants to do with her life. And if you're so concerned about the fetus that she doesn't want it, why don't you take the fetus with a baby? Why don't you adopt the child then? If you're that concerned, well, all these people who have these babies, why don't you adopt them if you're so concerned? So that's what I just wanted to say.
No, I appreciate you chiming in on that. Again, I appreciate you all for calling in to chime in on this topic. I know it's a tough one, as I mentioned earlier. Put it in the comments. Let us know what your thoughts, concerns are.
Put it in the comments.